While week 4 was a wild one in the NFL with 9 games decided in the final 2 minutes or in overtime, including 7 in the final minute or OT, week 5 had 10 of the 14 games decided by 6 points or less. That's 71.4% of the games. That tied for the highest percentage of games in a single week over the past 25 seasons. So what does week 6 have in store for us all? Well, it starts tonight with a huge Thursday night game in Carolina, which we'll preview, including all the other week 6 matchups, as the OFN on PSN starts now. Thanks for tuning in to the Ourlads Football Radio Network as we preview Week 6 in the NFL with Tony Mejia, who's an independent sports columnist and exclusive handicapper at Vegas Insider. So, Tony, what did you learn the most from Week 5?
Oh, I mean, I've learned that Mitch Trubisky's very fortunate because he could have had a much rougher debut than he did and got lucky with a touchdown pass. And in a game that I thought, the Bears played well enough to hang around in, obviously. Mm-hmm. But, I think, I like what I see in terms of it, him being able to move. So by no means am I coming down on him, but that's freshest in my mind. And obviously got the Bears a cover that they probably didn't deserve. But, you have to tip your hat to Minnesota and winning a game where I know you hate this stuff, but where they don't put the ball in peril at all and just settle for a game-winning field goal to win, but not cover a spread.
Hey, that's people who are people who are into that sort of thing. Yes, and we see it every week in a lot of the games. We talked about the crazy one from the week prior. And it's one of those things why sometimes you just kind of feel like in some games where you don't touch it and you're just having fun and then that's when you can go, oh boy, I wonder what would have happened if I would have taken them and the spread. So but that's what the beauty of the NFL is all about, and college football, that there's so many different aspects of it. Just as a fan, if you want to gamble, if you want to play fantasy sports, there's so many different aspects to it. Unfortunately, it goes by so fast. So we're almost, a few weeks away from the midway point of the NFL, which is a real bummer. But what about the bye weeks? Because the bye weeks just kind of started. I don't really think that the Miami-Tampa Bay bye weeks count. So, this will be the first week that we'll be able to find out with the 4 teams that had their byes last week exactly, how. I mean, when you take a look at bye teams over the past 5 or 6 years or even longer, have you ever noticed anything? Is it like, okay, well, if you're Andy Reid, then, but other than that, do you ever notice anything from teams coming off byes?
I mean, because they move it around so much, it's tough to really pick up themes. I mean, clearly early on, you can probably not need that bye week as much as you do in week 8 and 9. And I think it makes a difference where in late October and November, to have a team that finally got 1 week to get their bodies a little healthier,
sure,
makes more of a difference than it would right now. But if you have a solid coaching staff in place, you can generate so much improvement, in regards to your efficiency that that can kind of overshadow the first thing that comes to mind, which is physical health.
Yeah, and one of those teams that probably, I mean, if you look at it with Houston and their situation with the injuries, no team dealt with more serious injuries to a team that was really coming on like Houston last week with Watt, Merciless, and others. But they have Cleveland this week and then a bye, so it's almost like having back-to-back byes. So at least that's when you hope that you can turn something negative into, well, maybe this will be beneficial to us, and every team deals with injuries, and if we can beat Cleveland this week and then go into the bye and get rested up, maybe that comes at the right time. And sometimes the byes come early and it works out better for you as opposed to coming late when maybe it's too late.
Yeah, I think from a strategic standpoint, the team that benefited most out of the 4 who went on a bye week first is Atlanta. You have a coordinator change, pretty drastic one. Matt Ryan's kind of struggling.
Yeah.
It's probably solid for them to take a step back and then now press forward over the next 12 games.
Yeah, that was something I think a lot of people don't really think too much of, is the move to bring in Sarkisian, who Very weird situation with him, of course, dating back to college, and then of course having an alcoholic problem, and then and then being able to get the job and the gig at Alabama after Kiffin left, and then leaves and gets the head offensive coordinator job in Atlanta, which really came out of nowhere. Nobody expected Steve Sarkisian to be the offensive coordinator at Atlanta, but I kind of think people kind of just forgot about that. But still, that Matt Ryan in this offense should be fine. And when things are going well, like it did the first few weeks, nobody really wants to talk about it when you're winning games. But then all of a sudden, Ryan starts throwing interceptions. You blamed some of them on tips and such in the first game against Detroit. And in the second game, oh, well, Julio Jones wasn't there. Mohamed Sanu wasn't there. So I think that's a great point that now you come off the bye. No more excuses because Jones should be back. Okay, Sanu's out, but that's not an excuse for throwing interceptions. Let's if you're an Atlanta fan, no more excuses. Let's go back to playing the type of football we played last year, or else maybe they're in a little bit of trouble.
Absolutely. I'm in total agreement there. And Miami comes in vulnerable in the back. They're going to get pressure up front, but this should be an opportunity to show what kind of work Sark put in the lab this week, as there should be multiple big plays against this defense.
All right, let's start with the game tonight, as we always do. And we've got a good one tonight between Philadelphia and Carolina. Battle of 4-1 teams. The Eagles have won 3 straight. Carolina, meanwhile, has actually performed a little bit better on the road this year, it seems. They've had their only loss at home this year. They've dropped both covers at home, which tells you they're just not playing well at home. But they won both their recent road games by 3 points at New England and Detroit. And most importantly, Cam Newton followed up the New England game, which we were wondering, was that the Patriots or Cam Newton? Well, looks like it was Cam Newton because he's starting to develop a nice consistency there with both Funchess and Benjamin, which everybody thought could happen on paper. And maybe Greg Olsen not being there is a good thing for the offense. They go to their receivers more. You've got McCaffrey out of the backfield. They're still not running the ball, though, and that's a big problem. And they were also very sloppy last week with 11 flags. But what really catches my eye on this one is not having Lane Johnson for the Eagles. He is such a big loss for that team. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure people realize how big, and maybe they'll realize it on Thursday. Going up against Rivera's defense this week without Lane Johnson, I think that's trouble. Carolina's only a 3-point home favorite. I like the Panthers.
Well, I mean, it's a significant loss. To start with Cam, I think, and the difference between road and home, it might just be the calendar, because it switched to October after the 3 interception game at home against New Orleans. And instead of regressing, he's really stepped it up. And it's, Rivera said this week, I think it's just all about how much better he feels, in terms of his recovery time. Well, that's going to add a wrinkle given the shortened week, because now you're coming off of shoulder surgery, and this will be the first time where you're asked to play a game 3 days after you just played a game. So I definitely gave a lot of thought to that. As one of the major factors in this matchup. You mentioned another one in Lane Johnson being out. Mm-hmm. Obviously a huge loss. No way to undersell that. He'll be replaced by Hala Vaitai, who fared really well last week. I mean, he played 34 snaps and didn't allow a hurry. Okay. So, they're encouraged by that, but it's going to be tough against the Carolina front. And Carson Wentz is obviously playing well since LeGarrette Blount had that one carry game. It was whistled back. He's really become a focal point in that offense with 42 carries. So you can kind of see that by featuring him, the offense looks more balanced and even explosive.
Yeah, it just shows you sometimes what happens when an injury happens to a veteran player like Sproles. It opens the door for younger, fresher, and maybe better players at this stage of their careers, like Blunt, and even when Smallwood was playing. Because I'm sorry, it's just not a coincidence that the Eagles have got their running game going ever since Darren Sproles went down. But by the way, Carolina 20-1 to win the Super Bowl, and I wouldn't like them much lower than that. So I'm actually thinking that that's a good investment this week. I'm still not sure with Cam Newton whether he's mature enough and this team can win a championship. But with the Patriots playing like they're playing, we still don't know. We'll get to the Chiefs in just a second, whether they're capable of winning a Super Bowl. But still, 20 to 1. I think it's worth it at this point in time, especially because I wouldn't want that number to go down much further. And
Well,
go ahead.
to that point, the most recent Westgate update, because I put my numbers in the preview every week, tell you what the odds went to from where they were last week. Carolina is now at 14 to 1. Philadelphia is at 16 to 1. They're now 4-5 in the NFC behind the big boys.
Okay.
So
There you go.
your Green Bay, your Dallas, and Seattle. So yeah, these are two teams that we'll wake up on Friday and be talking up one of them as a 5-1 team and a team that you have to keep an eye out for the second half of the season, see if this is for real or not.
All right. Eagles, meanwhile, have a big one next week as well. They host Washington on Monday Night Football. Okay, let's go to which more than likely is the game of the week on Sunday, and that's Pittsburgh at Kansas City. Everybody wants to know exactly what's going to go on with Pittsburgh and when are they going to wake up, and yet they're 3-2, tied for first. So that's how crazy it is. But we talked about it last week. This was the only game of the week, as I mentioned last week on the show, that I liked as an upset, which was Jacksonville, and I went ahead and took them, and they came through for me big time. So I'm real happy about that, obviously. But if the reason was really because I just didn't like, as we've talked for the last few weeks about what's been going on with Pittsburgh, I kind of felt that this was coming. Now the question is when you finally do go down and you hit the pavement, sometimes teams use that as a wake-up call, time to get up and start going. But I don't know if this is the right time for that to happen. You're facing the hottest, best team in the NFL. The Steelers right now, I don't care about the record. Throw out the record. Fact is, the Steelers are playing awful right now on offense. They're in a daze. They are so much better than what they have shown us so far. And to expect them to just wake up against the Chiefs on the road, I think that's asking a little too much. Kansas City's a 4.5-point favorite in this one. They're 5-0, both straight up and against the spread this year. Pittsburgh, Roethlisberger coming back after the 5-interception performance. We'll see. But they beat Kansas City last year in the divisional playoffs 18-16 when KC failed a 2-point conversion with less than 3 minutes to go in the game. Pittsburgh has beaten the Chiefs 3 out of 4 since 2014, so they're very familiar with each other. But I'm sorry, I just cannot go. I cannot not go with the Chiefs in this situation. If Pittsburgh's going to wake up, well, go ahead and prove it to me.
Yeah, this is by far the best team that Pittsburgh will face, and not saying that simply because they're undefeated, but they faced Cleveland, Chicago, and Baltimore, which was still in a funk. They snapped out of last week in part because the Raiders are even more of one. Their best win is against Minnesota, who started Case Keenum about an hour after saying that Sam Bradford won't play. So they really haven't played anybody.
Nope.
And this is going to be tough. I think Pouncey's going to play, so that's a plus. But Foster is questionable, so there's issues up front. The one thing with before you go full bore on the Chiefs, you got to find out about their injury situation with Kelsey and concussion protocol. He's got to get out of it. Such a key member of that passing game. I think he makes everything else go. And then the defense, I think they're going to get Dee Ford back, which would obviously be a huge plus. And Justin Houston should also go. So they got those guys. Given the addition of Kelsey on the lineup, it's hard not to go with Kansas City.
Yeah, and also the receiver situation. If Kelsey doesn't play, you throw in the fact that Conley's now out for the year, and Wilson's a little banged up. So now you do have some issues in the receiving game for the Chiefs. They're not exactly a very deep team with their receivers. Haven't been for a long time. And then I'm not worried about their offensive line injuries because it hasn't hurt them yet. And I think also Gilbert's supposed to be back this week for the Steelers. Is that true? That's Gilbert's supposed to be back this week?
Possibly.
Okay.
My thing is, if Kelsey doesn't go, you have the potential for one of those very conservative Alex Smith goes back in his shell games, because the Steelers' defense, if nothing else, is one of the fastest in football. And I think you'd see check down Alex, and that potentially could get you in trouble.
And Alex Smith has got to be praised because there was no question, as you mentioned. Even maybe does this put Alex back into the shell you're talking about, or is this a season that no matter what is thrown at Alex Smith, he's going to have a great season? Because I don't know. I mean, I tell you right now, he might be the MVP of the league after week 5. That's how great
Oh,
he's
there's no
playing.
question. He's been fantastic. It's just that Kelsey has been the security blanket. He's helped everything else kind of
Mm-hmm.
fall into place. Him and obviously having such a dynamic performance for Kareem Hunt right out of the gate, and the fact that he's doing such a nice job catching the ball out of the backfield. But again, I mean, you don't want to overwork him. You wonder about the wall, and so to me, I would feel a lot safer knowing that Kelsey's going to be a go. If he does, I would probably pull the trigger on Kansas City because Pittsburgh's struggles are significant enough that they shouldn't end overnight, especially on the road.
Yeah, they might want to get Tyreek Hill a lot of touches this week if Kelsey isn't going to be able to go, and maybe we see a little bit of Jehu Chesson, the fourth round rookie wide receiver, if Albert Wilson also can't go for the Chiefs. All right, let's move on to another big game. This is an NFC North matchup between Green Bay and Minnesota. Green Bay is a 3-point road favorite here. And as we mentioned just a few minutes ago, Minnesota coming off a big win for them based on the situation that Sam Bradford didn't look completely healthy. Chicago dominated Minnesota up front. Bradford just wasn't himself. And they went to Keaton, and he had a good game, 17 to 21. And he was the winning quarterback, no question. Vikings have beaten the Packers 2 out of the last 3 games. McKinnon also was very, very big for them. Biggest game he's ever had as a Viking. Most important performance from McKinnon. Perfect time for him to do it, too, with Cook being out for the year. We talked last week. I just don't trust Latavius Murray. Well, McKinnon, he's now the man because he could also catch out of the backfield. So hopefully for Vikings fans, this is the beginning of McKinnon finally providing what they've always hoped that he could provide as a former college quarterback. For the Packers, they got Bulaga back last week. Not sure they're going to get Bakhtiari back this week, but that was a good step. And what was also a good step was my boy Aaron Jones from UTEP, one of my sleepers from the beginning of the season as far as rookies. Didn't know he'd ever get into the action this year, but when he did the previous week, we talked about him getting into the game against Dallas, and I felt he'd play well, but he even exceeded my expectations with 125 yards and a touchdown. And I don't care what happens with Montgomery. They have to play Jones. Montgomery's not even a real running back anyway. Play Jones. They won one Super Bowl because they ran the ball with James Starks. Now they got a true running back that looks like James Stark did that year that they won the Super Bowl. They want to win another Super Bowl this year. They better run the ball now with Aaron Jones. And you know what? I like the Packers here. They're a 3-point road favorite. It's Keenum most likely against Rodgers. I'll take Rodgers.
Well, yeah, and it's Keenum working with a compromised Stephon Diggs, which is huge. I think that lack of explosion was a major reason why the Bears were able to hang around. Keenum's going to do. He's not going to lose you games. He's one of my favorite backup quarterbacks in this league. In terms of you see the limitations, even back from when he came up at Houston, he just always beats you with his brain for the most part. Knows what people are supposed to be and gets the job done. So can they beat the Packers? Even though the QB matchup is a mismatch, sure. But yeah, with at full strength, with Diggs being limited, with McKinnon. One of the reasons I liked Latavius Murray's matchup last week was McKinnon. Really, to me, it looked like he badly sprained his ankle in that previous game. So I thought Murray would be the primary ball carrier. He obviously started, but I didn't think McKinnon would be as healthy and fresh enough as he obviously was. So that was a major boost. You're going to have to play keep away and trust your defense to make plays like they did against the Bears. But Rodgers isn't Mitchell Trubisky.
And by the way, no, he's not. And by the way, this is the first time I'm going to seriously think about the Packers as a Super Bowl team. They're 7-1, I believe, to win the Super Bowl, right around that. And again, if they can run the ball, then that is what they need to do to have balance. The defense still worries me a little bit. Cowboys almost won that game because the Packers once again couldn't stop the Cowboys when they needed to. They won the game because they got the ball last. So that is still a problem with the Packers right now. And even 7-1 is a little low for me, but I'm a lot more optimistic if I'm a Packer fan that maybe we've got a running back here and a running game to counter. By the way, next week they host the Saints, which could be a really nice matchup with Breeze and Rodgers, and Minnesota will host Baltimore next week. By the way, Minnesota has lost 5 straight games. as a dog. So keep that in mind.
And they have Andrew Sendejo questionable with a groin. If he's out, that's the backup safety for Rodgers to pick on. Will be out there.
Okay. Next up, believe it or not, we're talking about a New York Jet game this early in the show. But that's because the Jets, the Jets have won 3 straight, and the Patriots haven't exactly caught fire yet. But the Patriots, as expected, are nearly a 10-point favorite, and as well they should be. But here's a nice little divisional matchup trend that I like going on with the Jets in this one, getting 10, and that is that the Jets are 2-2 straight up, 4-0 against the spread the last 4 games at home against the Patriots, with all 4 games decided by a total of 15 points, and the Jets are getting 10. And 2 of those games went to overtime, with the Jets winning both games. Not only have the Jets won 3 straight, they've covered 3 straight. I know Powell's doubtful, so that's a blow, especially since we don't know if Forte is going to play, but McGuire's looked pretty good. So I don't think that's a major issue. The issue is are they going to be able to stop Tom Brady? And Patriots want to throw the ball. They probably get Gronk back. That's a tough blow for the Jets to have to face Gronk. We'll see Jamal Adams on Gronk, though. That could be entertaining. But the problem with the Patriots, though, all season, if you really look at it, is their defense is just not the same. The personnel is not the same. That's why I really don't think that this team, I believe in it as anywhere near as the way I did in the preseason. I thought Belichick probably always had something under his sleeves, but no Sheard, no Ninkovich, no Long. They traded Collins last year. No Logan Ryan. You don't just lose guys like that and replace them when you can't. I mean, even Alan Branch has been banged up. McClellan's been injured. Derek Rivers is out for the year. The rookie Hightower hasn't been 100%. And the guys that replaced them, Guy, Marsh, Butler, Van Noy, Roberts, and Jonathan Jones. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm sorry, but if the Patriots are going to win this year, they're going to have to outscore people.
They are, but I like Van Noy, and I also think that those reasons are why you probably shouldn't panic about the Patriots, because they did lose all those guys, and we saw the results where the ineptitude reigned, but they're coming off their best performance against Tampa. I think the weather helped, and the fact that Jameis was so off also masked some missed coverages, but you build on that. Now you have a couple extra days to work with, and you're facing a Jets offense that, let's face it, Ferrier Jenkins is your best weapon. You're probably not very dynamic. So look, for me, the Jets now have to face Tom Brady and the Patriots after going back to back on a Dolphins offense that's inept. Blake Bortles led Jacksonville, and most recently the Cleveland Browns. So that's going to be a drastic difference. The 10 to me sounds fair, and the recent success kind of have to throw it out the window, considering most recently the Jets have had aspirations of being a legitimate playoff team. Last year they weren't, but going into the season they felt that way. This year this has all come as a surprise, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if the bottom falls out and starts falling out this week.
Yeah, I mean, you look at when you watch a Jet game and in the offense, it's painful. It really is. And look, it's just the fact. It's just the same, which is they're not going to do anything offensively unless they try out Petty. They're just not. I mean, it's all right. McCown and they're 3-2, but these writers and such that oh yeah, he's the best quarterback. Well, you don't know if he is, because you've never seen Petty play consistently. It's his 3rd year now. You have no idea. So we never know. No one knew about what would happen. We just talked about with the running back situation with Philadelphia, or even the Jets. I mean, they were going with Forte. Look what happened. So you don't know unless you give it a try. But hey, you know what? Jet fans are happy. They're 3-2. They get a game they'll sell out, and they'll get psyched at least for a quarter or a half. And then after that, we'll see, because at least they do get the Dolphins and the Bills 2 out of their next 4 games, sandwiched in between, I believe, what is it? Maybe Atlanta and the Patriots. So yeah, if they can go 2-2 in the next 4 games, I think Jet fans will be ecstatic, thinking that maybe this is not going to be that dreadful of a season, because it's still early. Big test. We'll see whether or not they pass it or not. They don't have to win it to pass it. So, by the way, the Patriots are 2-0 straight up and against the spread on the road this year. They will host Atlanta next week on Sunday Night Football.
But as a diehard Jets fan, do you really want this, say they top out at 8-8 even. Is that worth it to, considering the Barkley that's out there or the quarterbacks that are out there? Like, you mentioned about Jets fans being happy and getting a sellout here. That's in the short term. As a Jets fan, how are you feeling about this? I mean, obviously you couldn't have predicted 3-2. So how are you feeling about it?
Well, look, in the beginning of the season, we did talk about we have a show, Jets Confidential Radio, that we air, and we talked about how if everything worked out perfectly because of their schedule, that I felt I wasn't in this tank mode. I wasn't in this talent is terrible mode. I actually saw that there was I actually agreed with all the moves they made to get rid of the old high price guys for the young guys because I thought the young guys were talented. And I think we're seeing some of that. They're actually a better team and most importantly, they're a together group. They're a group that some of the garbage in the locker room is gone. The Sheldon Richardsons, the Brandon Marshalls, the guys that were overpriced and too old are gone. So I think that when you win close games, you need that. You beat Jacksonville close. You beat Cleveland close. That's what gets you over the hump is when you have a together team. So I do think they're a quarterback away though. I think they're one off season away. They got a lot of salary cap space. They'll probably get no matter what. They'll have See, I don't worry about the draft status because they'll probably end up somewhere even if they have a good season, 7 wins. They'll be close enough that with the draft picks they have, including the extra second for Sheldon, that they can move up a couple spots, get a quarterback. Because keep in mind that we might have 5 this year between Darnold, Rosen, Mayfield, Rudolph, and Allen. So that's a lot of quarterbacks that they'll be able to grab one of them. So yeah, I'm not concerned with it. I know Jet fans are. But I'm not. I think that just go out, try to win as many games as you can. But that's why I bring up Petty's name because I think it's important that they find out whether or not he has anything. And I'd rather see him get a shot than have him get thrown in there with 2 games to go at the end of the season when nobody cares. But anyway, yeah, I think just to answer your question, yeah, I'm not concerned. I think it's better just go out, get a winning culture going. And if you could do that, that's the most important thing. All right, let's go to the Rams in Jacksonville. Speaking of 2 teams that need winning. And a winning culture. And so far, we're seeing that this year with both teams, believe it or not, at 3-2. Now, the Rams are coming off their worst performance of the season last week. And yet, even though, and I say that because even though that they really weren't in the Washington game like they were in this one, they committed 5 turnovers against Seattle. It was a game that they clearly should have won and didn't. They even had that chance at the end when Goff just missed cupped in the end zone. They could have actually won the game after committing 5 turnovers. So that's a lesson they're going to have to learn to move forward. They go to the Southeast Coast now. Luckily for them, they get a 4:00 start. Jag team that won at Pittsburgh, but now they're in that role as a favorite again that we talked about, Tony. Now they're at home, so that's different than the trend we talked about a few weeks ago in New York about being the first road favorite since 2011, which they didn't win. But keep in mind, they're 0-3 straight up and against the spread. Their last 3 games as home favorite, and they're a 2.5-point home favorite. This is a game I'm just going to enjoy watching for 2 upstarts, and I'm not touching.
Well, this is the Jared Goff prove something game. You're going on the road. You're taking your team across the country, coming off a tough loss against an elite secondary. So this is on you to not make turnovers and move the ball and play smart. The bean that he threw to the Cup should have been caught. I mean, it was a laser, but Cup needs to make that catch. So I thought that he held up really nicely in a comeback attempt when things didn't go well. So I want to see another step forward from him. Obviously, if you're the Jaguars, Bortles has to protect the football. You have to ride Fournette and hope your defense holds up. As far as the favorite role, I think, you got to give the Jaguars the benefit of the doubt based on what they were able to do last week against Pittsburgh. So I have no problem with them in that role.
Yeah, they're going to eventually end that run. So, and they could do it this week. That's why I'm not touching the game because I actually if I was taking the game, I might take Jacksonville. I mean, I do think that I think this is a good spot for him. And but look, Rams surprised us the last time they were on the road beating Dallas. So. And I kind of do think that Rams are a little bit better team in general, and I think that's all because Goff's a better quarterback than Bortles. So
it would have been interesting to see how that game would have unfolded against the Seahawks if Gurley initial touchdown,
Oh, yes, that was
isn't
terrible.
overturned.
Oh, I hate
Well, I mean,
those.
anyway, it was tough luck too.
It
It wasn't
was. It's
like he
luck.
was loafing into the end zone.
No,
But yeah, I mean, like, what if they get up and
absolutely.
start snowballing? So yeah,
Absolutely.
I want to see how this team responds.
Yeah, because they won last week. The Jags did. Bortles is 8 of 14, 95 yards and an interception. So
Yeah,
you start Fournette, and you're going to stop the Jags. That's just common knowledge now. But yeah, as you said,
he's not
Jacksonville.
getting any better.
Yep. No, he's not.
And it's sad to say because I mean, obviously I pulled for him as a UCF guy. He went to my high school as well, but you just
Yeah,
you don't see the growth.
it's not working.
If you're not seeing it at this point, it's hard to imagine the switch turning on.
And by the way, if you're Jacksonville, considering what a great job they've done in bringing up, you have now your running back, you have your defense now. That one of those quarterbacks, no matter where Jacksonville sits in the draft, they'll be able to take one of those quarterbacks as long as there are 5 or 4 quarterbacks out. Because I'm not even sure Josh Allen, the way he's playing, or Sam Darnold, the way he's playing, or even Mason Rudolph. I don't even know if any of those guys are going to be taken in the top 10 anyway. So you could probably.
Well, I buy that Josh Allen ends up a top 3 pick in spite of what's going on this year because of following college the way I do. Wyoming it's night and day the difference between what he had at his disposal last year and what he's got this year between the offensive line and the playmakers. He's been got banged up in camp. So even that game against Iowa that they were supposed to win, he went in hobbled. So wouldn't surprise me if he gets healthy and just wows people in workouts and ends up being the top quarterback.
Oh yeah, they'll fall in love with him for sure, no question about it.
Yep.
But yeah, one of them will be available, I think. So and they got to take them. So I mean, the Jacksonville is definitely a team that has to take quarterback. And if they do that, then watch out. This could be with Tom Coughlin running the show. Jags fans could have a nice run of success, but they got to get that quarterback. Detroit, New Orleans, and here's a good game: 3-2 Lions, 2-2 Saints. Saints favored by 4.5. As I mentioned, Saints will be at Green Bay next week, so that's a good one. Detroit will be on a bye next week. Detroit has beaten the Saints the last 3 years, so they're 3-0 against the Saints. And this will be the 4th straight meeting for them over the last 4 years. We're still waiting to find out if Armstead's going to be ready to go for the Saints. Streif's out for the year. For Detroit, they also have offensive line issues. Wagner and Lang have been kind of banged up, but most importantly, they just haven't been able to replace Taylor Decker. They're not doing enough offensively. I think they miss Kenny Golladay, even though he's a rookie. He's the only guy that has size with that unit. So it's just now, can the Saints defense, who's looked a lot better, again, the competition not as good, but they've looked a lot better the last couple of games. Now they get a bye, so they get to prepare for Detroit. How will that work out? I think it may not work out poorly for the Saints. You know what I think about the Saints. I'm glad to see that they're looking more like the team I thought they would be when the season started. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Saints in this one. 4.5, I'm a little bit concerned with because Detroit always plays close games, though.
Oh, I mean, right now at this point, I'm sold on Matthew Stafford as somebody that I do not want to pay at all. He gets that ball back, and credit Cam Newton, throwing the dart to Benjamin that he came up with because that was a 3rd down that they badly needed. If you give Detroit the ball back, there would have been a little over 2 minutes left.
Uh-huh.
The Lions were going to win that game.
Yeah.
And we've seen it time and time again this season from Stafford. I think the offense looks better. Ansah, questionable, but he'll go. He's basically been the same issue with him every week. They're resting him in practices and letting him go in games. So, I think the one difference that could be made in this game is the Saints coming off the bye and being fresher. But other than that, I think it's a fair fight. I would take the points.
All right, let's go to Miami and Atlanta. We talked about this game at the Open, and Falcons are a big 11.5-point favorite in this one. And now, interesting because they have the bye, and the next week they have New England on the road on Sunday Night Football. So that obviously is a huge game for them. So How does that work into Miami? I mean, when you're in the bye, are you just really all concerned about Miami, or are you already looking ahead to to the Patriots? Not necessarily the coaching staff, but of course the players. But as you said, there's work to do this past week. Maybe that's a good thing that they had to get serious about getting their offense back in shape. And Jones should play from everything that we hear. They still got to get Beasley back. He's been banged up all year. He's missed some time. Look, the Dolphins are just offensively a mess, and now the whole coach thing this week, the big story is a big distraction. They don't have a rushing touchdown all season. Their only touchdown last week was a defensive touchdown. Look, unless Atlanta continues to fumble it around offensively and they commit another couple of turnovers, I don't see how Atlanta doesn't just rip Miami apart, or at least, fourth quarter, third quarter, they score a couple of quick ones to widen the gap. All right, Miami won. Maybe that'll get their confidence going, but I'm sorry. I don't like anything that's going on with Miami right now.
Yeah, it's hard to get behind that. They won a game because of a penalty, calling back a key Titans touchdown that would have put them, really in a bad position. And yeah, because of that defense holding up against the backup quarterback that, really looks to be a backup. So,
if that,
yeah, this is a huge challenge for them to try, because it's going to be on the defense again, and you're going up against a team that, and to answer your question about New England, yeah, they're in the horizon, but they haven't done much defensively anyway. So what you're doing is seeking improvement and getting on the same page offensively. That plays as well against Miami as it will against New England. So I think they'll be fine there. They're favored by this much for a reason, and I think they've got a good shot to cover.
Big stretch for the Falcons against AFC East teams. I mean, it's like, what is it? It's probably like 4 out of 6 games against AFC East teams. They played the Bills 2 weeks ago, Dolphins this week, Patriots next week, and in a few weeks the Jets. So we'll see whether or not, if the Dolphins give Atlanta a game on Sunday, maybe that's a sign that the Falcons just aren't competing very well against AFC East teams. All right, because I wouldn't figure out any other reason why Dolphins would be in that game. Tampa Bay at Arizona, and Tampa Bay a short 1.5-point favorite on the road against Arizona. And boy, Arizona last week, we talked about it. Just they would do to get beat up bad. They just weren't playing well. The offensive line's been a mess with injuries. The running back, the star running back, being out. So they make the deal for Peterson. All right, well, he's probably not going to play this week, or even if he does, I don't know. I can't imagine it's going to mean anything this week. Look, they lost to Philly, Dallas, and Detroit by a combined 97-47, and their 2 wins were against the Colts and the Niners in overtime. And Tampa Bay is more like Detroit, Dallas, and Philly than they are Indianapolis and San Francisco. By the way, Arizona is also 0-5 against the spread this year, so I'll take the Bucs.
Yeah, there's a reason why the Bucs are a road favorite, despite the fact that they haven't shown much, and that's because the Cardinals haven't shown us anything at all. I don't know about Peterson. We'll see if he plays or not. I don't see why he can't get out. I mean, he's a veteran. He can't get out there and run basic running plays, especially if they need the fresh leg. So it wouldn't surprise me if he goes. They just need to get somebody the ball that can get them out of 2nd and 9. And maybe he ends up being that cog. I didn't immediately hate the move when I heard about it. So, that kudos to them.
Yeah. Good move.
Trying to be proactive.
Sure.
And yeah, you have major offensive line issues. That's essentially why you're in this mess.
Yep.
So, if they can get a little more out of the running game, a little more protection for Palmer and down distance that favors him, they'll be able to move the ball. The defense is still solid, and I think that will improve because the secondary is a lot healthier now than it was when it started the season. So, we should see them give Jameis Winston some issues, and Jameis has to protect the football, in order to get out with a road win. It's a big game for Tampa Bay, potentially a swing game on their season.
Yeah, they lose this game and they're in big trouble because they, like you said, they need to start playing better as well. They only had 1 road game this year and they got beat up by the Vikings. Winston threw 3 picks, and by the way, they played Arizona last year at Arizona, and Arizona beat them 40-7, and Winston was picked off 4 times. So that's not a good combination. The road game and then last year's game for Winston. He does get Martin back in a second week, and that's good because he looked good in limited touches last week, coming off the suspension against the Patriots. That'll help. Now, is Patrick Peterson banged up? I mean, he is, but any word on whether or not he may not play?
No, I think he's going to go.
Okay.
Banged up, but should play through the quad issue. I think the Condice's been out and probably will continue to be. And obviously, they lost Marcus Golden a few weeks back, and he was their best pass rusher.
Yeah.
It's a defense that's been banged up. From Tampa Bay side, Levante David still out, and we'll see about Alexander if they can get him back. Two safeties or we're down in the Patriots game. They have a chance to get back with the extra time to heal. So monitor that. Probably the healthier defense forces the key turnover that swings that game one way or another.
And the Cardinals did get John Brown back last week, so that's big because he's definitely their number 2 receiver next to Fitzgerald. So if he stays healthy, that'll help that offense out in Palmer. All right, let's go to an AFC West matchup. I don't see a spread on this game yet, and maybe that's because of the fact that even though it looks more and more likely that Derek Carr is going to play, so maybe we'll see something any minute now. But whatever it winds up being, I don't think it's going to be that big. The way the Raiders are played, even with Carr, but I gotta believe that maybe this is what the Raiders needed all along to kind of spark something. As long as Carr is healthy, because I don't even know how to explain how poorly they were looking before Carr got hurt. And the Chargers are coming off a win, and they've actually looked a lot better on the road than they have in that so-called home stadium that they play in. So keep that in mind. But the Raiders have beaten the Chargers the last 2 seasons, so that's 4 straight times, even though the last 3 games have been won by 3 points in each. So keep that in mind. This is I like the Raiders only because of the fact there's a gut feeling that Derek Carr is going to come back and is going to ignite something with this team that needs an igniting. And by the way, I also wouldn't mind investing in the Raiders right now, considering they're 40-1, because if that's still the number, because I don't think there's no question that they're not a 40-1 Super Bowl team, and it's still a long season. And I've seen many teams play like this early on and then catch fire and go. And I think the Raiders have the talent to catch fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Now is the time to get in on the Raiders because they will be a different team in December. On the defensive end, that was expected. On the offensive end now, that needs to be the case given Carr's injury and the fact that we've seen Amari Cooper completely disappear, and it has been just frustrating to watch because it's a confidence thing, and it's I think really at this point the biggest issue that needs to be fixed within that offense. They need him to play like the one so they can have 2 ones. Crabtree went out there despite an injury and actually gave him something last week, in terms of presence and the fact that Amari Cooper, who's healthier, isn't doing that is a major issue. I think the Carr is probably worth about 5 or 6 points on the spread here. If he plays, I could see Oakland being as much as a 7-point favorite.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, I think they'll be favored by a point at the most.
Yep.
We'll see.
Yeah. And by the way, we talked about it, and I'm glad we saw it, and that's Jalen Richard getting some touches. That's what they have to do. Give the kid some touches. He's a completely different back than Lynch, and that's what you have to do. You have to keep the defense off pace with that, and you put Richard in there, and he can just go with his speed. That's not the way Lynch runs. So I think that works a lot better in their running game when you give Richard somewhere around 7 to 10 touches in the backfield a game. And by the way, Lynch actually was okay. I mean, they had to throw the ball a little bit more late, but Lynch actually okay. It's not great, but he had 43 yards and a touchdown. But to tell you the truth, that's a lot better than what he had recently. So maybe that's a start in the right direction. Get Richard involved in the offense some more. Get Carr back. And we'll see about the Chargers, their opponent this week, that have been a stubborn opponent, even though the Raiders are on a 4-game win streak against them. Let's go to the primetime games over the weekend. We'll start with the Monday night game, and they're not good ones, by the way. We're not getting Andrew Luck against Marcus Mariota. We actually could get Matt Castle against Jacoby Brissett. Maybe Mariota plays. Maybe the extra day helps him. Could. But you don't want to screw around with Marcus Mariota because we've seen him hurt before. He's dealing with a hamstring. So he has got to be 100%, or else you just don't throw him out there. Especially with the Houston with a rookie quarterback going through some injury issues, the Colts with 2 wins. If you got to stick out Castle one more game and lose, do it, because next week you're playing Cleveland. Then you can get Mariota back and you'll be better off for it in the long run. But yeah, if Tennessee, this all depends. This is it. I mean, does Castle play? If he does, I am all over the Colts. Because look, I really like the way Jacoby Brissett's been playing. He's now proven to me that he's a very capable backup quarterback in this league. And here's, of course, the big one that we have to talk about. Indianapolis has won 11 straight games in this series, and they've covered 10 of those 11.
Yeah, and he's Brissett is I think he's got a shot to be one of the big top 32. And be a legitimate starter. Just because I think you see that growth. He really didn't get a lot of opportunities in New England, but clearly learned a lot. And now you see him. You see him every game make nice improvisational plays, and he's dissecting what the defense wants to do, and making an offense look serviceable. And now they have some linemen back. So they should be better going forward. I won with them last week, backing a home win. So we'll see. If Mariota plays, obviously this game's off the board as well.
Yep.
If Mariota plays, they expect a lot of handoffs, because you're right. I think we could see him at less than 100%, which not necessarily smart, but I don't think they want to go to 2-4 and drop a game to a division rival.
By the way, they had 11 penalties last week, 188 total yards. Mariota doesn't play. To me, it's not even a debate on which way to go. And we talked about it last week. Even when the Colts have lost recently, they were leading Seattle in the second half in that one loss, and they lost Arizona in overtime. So they have been competing, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that their defense is a lot better than last year, and I think we're starting to see that as well. And of course, also they're more competitive than they have been the first few weeks, because Brissett is learning how to play quarterback, and that's also turning out to be a heck of a trade. The Colts bringing in Brissett, because in this division, if he can win a couple of games like this and then luck gets back, you never know about the Colts. So, all right, Sunday night game, boy, is anybody going to watch this one? Giants and Denver. I don't even know if Giant fans want to watch this one. Things are just so bad in New York right now. Even Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie's been suspended. Of course, Beckham out for the year. Brennan Marshall out for the year. Shepard out for the game. The only good thing is once again, Perkins gets hurt. What happens? They've got to run more with Gallman. They run more with Darkwood last week. They run together, 19 for 126 and a touchdown. The running game actually starts to produce. Everybody, and look, the offensive line isn't good. I get that. But the offensive line was being blamed for everything. And obviously that wasn't the case, because with Darkwood and Gallman, they're running the football a lot better than with Perkins. But now, I mean, Roger Lewis, that's their number one receiver, I guess. It's just, I don't know how they're going to move the ball against Denver. This looks like a blowout. Denver's a 12-point favorite. I will throw this in. I did a little research myself. Get this, 18 of the last 20 games that Denver has been involved in, the point spread has been 3.5 or less. And the only 2 games that they were more, one game was 6, the other was 8.5, both home games. Denver won them both and covered both. So I'll take Denver in this one. I don't like giving up points too much, but I mean, how can the Giants be prepared for this game?
Yeah, it's beyond the conditions, which play a huge role for a team coming from the East.
Throw that in there. Yeah.
You have a situation where McAdoo's got to keep his team healthy for next year. You don't want to get Eli Manning killed. I think you'll see a ton of run against a solid run defense, but you want to keep situations where Von Miller's got his foot in Eli Manning's throat as much as you can. And I think it's just a matter of getting out of Denver alive.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. They get off to a good start.
Name your score situation.
You would think, I mean, the only good thing for the Giants maybe is the fact that Denver's coming off a bye. So maybe they get off to a slow start, a lot of overconfidence, a week preparing for a winless team. I mean, come on, this will be a breeze. Maybe a first half that's closer than we think. I don't know. All right, Cleveland at Houston, and Houston's a 9.5 point favorite. As we mentioned, they get a bye after Cleveland. Cleveland goes with Hogan. That's the smart move. They ignited the offense last week, and he'll get to start here as well as he deserves it. 16 and 19, 194, a couple touchdowns, one pick against the Jets. Houston is just decimated with injuries. Even Clowney's banged up now. Merciless Watt out for the year. Brown is still on a holdout situation. Kevin Johnson's out. Cushing's out. Jackson and Joseph are also questionable. They're banged up at corner. McKinley's banged up at linebacker. But Deshaun Watson, 5 more touchdown passes. If they would have lost that game the way they lost that game, and everybody would have stayed healthy, I would have been like, okay, good loss. Nothing wrong with that. Watson's still looking awesome. But these injuries, wow. The good thing is they're playing Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this hurts your Texans Super Bowl long shot.
It does.
Look good, especially with Watson becoming all world. Yeah. I mean, look, now you have to outscore teams, and you've got the number 1 QBR quarterback in the league over the last few weeks running your show, and I don't think he's going to get stopped anytime soon. The control that he seems to have over what the Texans offense wants to do, and now that he has Fuller back and an additional weapon to go with alongside Hopkins, he's got options. He can run it. It's going to be a dynamic offense, I think, and it's going to have to be obviously without Watt and Merciless. I mean, good situation here for them to build some confidence for that new identity going forward.
Yeah, going into the bye, feel good about yourself. We're 3-3 in a division that's winnable. Absolutely. And by the way, good rookie matchup, Myles Garrett and Deshaun Watson. By the way, the Browns have lost 4 straight covers as well. Do you ever look into a third straight home game situation as being a negative?
No, not at all. Usually, I haven't done the numbers on them, and so I'd be curious as to what they are. But normally, when you have that many home games in a row, it gives you a huge advantage.
Okay. In the last couple of games, Chicago at Baltimore. Baltimore favored by 6.5, and San Francisco at Washington. Washington favored by 10.5. This might even be my favorite game of the week. I love Baltimore here. Baltimore, I obviously was panicking big time after them being one of my sleeper teams beginning of the season, the way they've been looking, and then at least it looked like they saved their season for 1 week. And it wasn't just because they just got, they had a defensive fumble recovery touchdown, but Flacco actually looked more a little like the old Flacco, or at least a decent facsimile of Flacco, unlike what we've seen in the prior games. So that's a step in the right direction. And he also ran the ball, which is important. Allen and Collins combined for 128 yards and a touchdown, so they're not going to miss West, who's out. For the Bears, remember we talked about this last week and even the last couple of weeks. They're a completely different team home and away. In their 2 road games, they've lost by a combined 64-21. Trubisky, first game on the road. Baltimore's defense is solid. It's not great, but it's solid. 6.5. Yeah, I mean, come on. This isn't the Baltimore team that we saw 2 weeks ago. At least I don't think it is. They're 3-2. They're tied for first.
I mean, to me, they're Jekyll and Hyde, but you do have to like them in this spot, given the short week for Chicago, the Trubisky on the road factor against a road crowd that shows up and chooses to be a factor. They've got some of the best fans in the league, so that'll be an issue. Bears get Trevathan back. There's still some life there from Trubisky's elevation, but the Ravens do have a veteran defense that can snuff that out pretty quickly. Can the Bears get big plays? I think that's the key. Cohen has been quieted over the last few weeks. But I think they've got a puncher's chance at this. Maybe at a backdoor cover. I'm not as confident in it in Baltimore as you are.
All right, and then San Francisco and Washington is, again, a 10.5-point favorite here. Look, a couple weeks ago, I took San Francisco as an outright upset against Arizona. They almost did it. Matter of fact, they have lost their last 4 games by a total of 12 points with 2 straight overtime losses. So 10 points is a lot of points to give up a team that has lost by a total of 12 points in their last 4 games. It is a West Coast team going to the East Coast at 1, so I get that. But maybe a benefit to San Francisco is Washington, A, coming off the bye. 2, or B, keep in mind, it's the first time the Redskins have been favored all year. And number 3, the injuries. We talked about how banged up they got late in that Kansas City game. Swearinger's still banged up. Allen's banged up. Zach Brown's banged up. Norman's out. Looks like Kelly, of course, not sure what to expect from him. Not that I think he matters that much. Plus, keep in mind, Washington next week at Philly on Monday night. It's a huge game. Potential look-away situation coming off the bye. I think it's a good spot to take San Francisco. I don't know if I'd go outright with the upset, but why not take the Niners to keep it close?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what their situation was. I assume that they went back from Indy and didn't stay out on the East Coast, so that is a lot of travel. Carlos Hyde was kind of banged up in that game as well. Wasn't really a factor there that could have gotten them some separation against Indy. So we'll see. I think both teams are banged up, and you figure that even though they don't get Norman back, that Washington defense that was starting to look fierce will be a factor with fresher legs.
All right, Tony. How's everything else going? You'll have your Thursday night report out yet?
Yeah, Thursday night preview between Philly and Carolina is out there. Should be a fun one. Weather's going to hold up, so we'll see who can impose their will. And obviously, NFL Essentials will be out there. The dozen college football preview of the best 12 matchups in the country. Also out there, so give it a look. FBI.
By the way, I guess I was probably wrong for loving Miami or liking them more than you did. But that Miami-Florida State series has just really gotten ugly. At least it was a close game last week, an exciting way to end it. But, I mean, you watch those two teams play now, especially on offense. I mean, the defense is, could still play, but, boy, offensively, it's hard to watch those teams now.
Well, I mean, it's tough, though, for FSU, considering it should have been Francois, and instead it's Blackman playing, what is the third game, I think?
Mm-hmm.
And then, Malik Rozier, courageous final drive, but,
yes.
He is what he is. He's not going to be a dynamic passer.
I like that Berrios kid.
The passion was there, at least.
Yeah, it was.
But
very passionate.
I go back to my sister went to school in Miami in the early 90s, so
yeah.
I started rooting for Miami back then, and that's the heyday of Miami FSU.
Who do you like tonight? Baseball game. Can you say? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, I can say. I'm going with the Cubs. Simply because I think Rizzo's too hot to fade. And whether you throw out Roark or Gonzalez, and it'll be interesting to see how Dusty handles that, because if you start one, you can switch and kind of take advantage of who Madden put in the lineup midstream, and we'll see Scherzer's a factor.
Yeah, we're going to see Max for sure, no doubt. He'll be pitching.
So,
I don't know how many innings he can pitch, but I'm a Washington fan, so I have never.
Oh yeah, okay, I didn't know that.
Since Montreal, I have never, as you know, never in my entire life seen my team win a series in the postseason. Never. So I get another shot tonight.
This would be the first NLCS they qualified for.
It would be the first. So I have another chance once again for a potential first. I mean, I would tell you the truth. I'd probably go with the Cubs too. I'm a little bit too into it as a biased perspective. Even though I will say this though: if they win the Nationals, I think the rest of the league better watch out. Because when you break down those walls, like we've seen with teams like the Cubs and the Red Sox, even though they don't have the long history of that, but still, I mean, Washington hasn't won as a franchise and whatever, but still, that you break down those walls, and sometimes the pressure is completely off, and then you become a very dangerous team. So
hopefully Dusty picks the right toothpick for you tonight to accessorize.
He better.
And stays out of the way.
He better. That'll be another dreadful night's sleep tonight if they lose. I'll be very upset. Tony, I appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Good.
All right. That's Tony Mejia. That's it for our show. So we will see you again next Thursday. By the way, we'll also see you at 6:30 in about an hour and a half for fantasy football coverage with Jamal Murphy. Then tomorrow, stay tuned for our college football show. We'll take a look at some of the top games. We'll give you some injury updates. And by the way, speaking of injuries, if you're a big college football fan, we do post weekly injury reports, very in-depth injury reports. So do a lot of research on that, and we make it available for the games each week. So you can check that out. You can also, by the way, follow every one of our shows on YouTube or iTunes under Prime Sports Network. And don't forget to check out the football content as well as the depth charts. Not only the NFL, but also college football. So those are the best depth charts in the industry at Ourlads.com. Follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. And that'll do it. So we'll see you next Thursday for Week 7 coverage of the NFL with Tony Mejia right here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network.